So, well, we're here partly because of Dance a Day in the month of May. And today's prompt is waking up. And your book that you just published on May 1st is called Awaken. And so I couldn't think of a better person to talk to about this theme of waking up and awakening and what that means and how we can embrace that theme in our bodies to really feel what it's like to awaken and then to take that into our lives.
Yeah.
I will say the origin of these prompts came from the first year I did it. I didn't have any prompts. In 2014, when I did Dance a Day in the month of May, it just, whatever happened. And I remember the video that I made on this day where I later pulled the theme from. I was in bed and I didn't feel great, but I knew I had to make a dance video. And so I just like flipped on the camera and I was like, did some dance in bed. And I was like, I'm up. And like, that's how I started my day. So it didn't really come from a profound place necessarily. But sometimes in those moments when we're not trying to be profound is when we often like get there.
Absolutely.
For meaning. So yeah. But waking up, what does that mean to you? Why, like, to name your book Awaken? And when I think of that, I think of you. It makes so much sense. But for people who don't know you, can you just tell a little bit about why you named your book that, what that means?
Yeah. Well, Jess, I love you so much. I love it. Like, okay, I've got to film this video. Like, I'm just going to wake up in bed. And you know, it's so funny because I think, like, just to pull from what you're talking about is the metaphor for the book. So this is just the cover of the book. And if you like actually open kind of the book from like the back to the front, it's dark here, right? It's dark here and it moves to light, right? So it's like, the word guru in Indian culture means from darkness to light, the one who brings you from darkness to light. And let's be really clear, the word darkness is that sense of depression or heaviness or, I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I got to do this thing, right? Like you are that day. And then the idea of awakening, right? Awakening who you really are is that you are this being of light. And I tell this story in the third chapter in the book, which you've heard because I've also shared it at Soul Camp, about the Golden Buddha. And there was this Buddha that was found in Thailand in the 1950s. And it was this huge, massive 8-9 foot high clay Buddha. And for hundreds and hundreds of years, it's been in this one temple. And they were moving the Buddha from one temple to another temple. And it fell from the crane that they were moving it on. And it fell into the mud and it cracked. And what they found when it fell and cracked is that underneath these layers and layers of clay was a solid gold Buddha statue. And it had been hidden for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. What they think happened is that when the Mongols were invading Thailand, the monks who guarded this Buddha, this golden Buddha, covered it to protect it in all of these different layers. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I use this metaphor in the book of our own journeys of remembering who we are. Like, life isn't about like discovering who you are or finding out who you are or like what you're here to do or discovering your purpose. It's about remembering, because deep down we all are born as that solid, golden, light-filled essence, really. And then we forget, right? Over time, we, get smacked with layers of our own armor and protection and masks we wear and the ways we feel like we need to be, right, in order to show up in the world, right? And you and I were talking about this before, at the beginning of like, what does it mean to like really like shake it off, like be rebellious? Like, who are we really when we're dancing and you're shaking off the layers of like, I am not any of this shit, right? I'm not this stuff. I'm not the sadness. I'm not the heaviness. I'm not the fear. Like, I am this luminous being of light, right? And like awakening to who we really are means we have to peel off those layers of who we're not. So that is what I would say to begin. Yeah.
Yes. I love that remembering and that inner golden Buddha that we all have inside of us. And you mentioned dance, and I think that the dance process for me really mirrors that, you know, that because even in the dance world, there's so many expectations of what a dancer should look like. And if you didn't make it into this company by a certain age, you should quit, and you should, and reading your story about, you know, your addiction to achievement and checking off all the boxes and doing all the clubs and being president of the sorority and, you know, like getting a job on Wall Street and like being like the top of the top constantly, because that is what we're supposed to do, or that success. And I think the dance world can mirror that a lot of the time too. And so many people are just like, well, if I'm not going to do that, then I'm not a dancer. When really it's like all that external stuff is just external stuff. And getting back to the core of who we are, the whole world can open up. And,
yeah. Well, and I think I did this, and like you did this just now, and it's like that's what it feels like even just from an embodied perspective of like, you know, like when I feel like I have to do something, that I'm being put in that box, like that makes me want to shrink. It makes me want to pull the covers over my head and not show up in the world and like not do anything, right? But when like I feel that like I can be whoever I want to be and I get to choose that, like that makes me just want to take a big deep breath and like open up my heart and like open up to the world. And I think it's amazing that we're talking about the same things, whether it's like my journey of like checking the achievement boxes, like going to a great school, working on Wall Street and being like, what? This isn't what I want. Like we all follow that path. And like the dance world, like this is the path, right? And you make it, and you either make it and you may be happy, you may not be happy, or you don't make it. And then it's like, it's when we have these external trappings of success and like, oh, you need to be this way and do this thing in order to succeed, or succeed or be happy even. When we don't get those things, we're like, so there's got to be something else. Like it can't be on the outside. And I just looked at my battery, and I need to plug my computer in right now.
Plug it in.
I'm going to plug it in.
I have an idea while you're going to do that.
Okay.
I love the song.
Yay.
As you're talking, and that idea of like opening up and awakening, I thought of a song, which is by Biet, who both of us know.
Yay.
From Soul Camp. Biet is an incredible musician and meditation teacher and artist in every sense of the word. She has one of her songs on her album, The Lunar. I feel like it would be a great song for us to do a dance break to right now and guide everyone through who's listening. And it's this song, it's called Second Interval. Which doesn't necessarily sound like it's significant, but the whole song takes you through what I hear in it is this like, it's like this deeper, more inward kind of place. And then as the song opens up, she literally starts saying, I'm awake. And so what I'd love for us to do, if you're up for it, Julie, is to do like, let's do a physical embodiment of this awakening. And I would just invite you all who's ever watching to find a place. So this is an exercise that I do called Move Through It, where you start with where you are. And so if there's an area of your life, or just in general, I know, Julie, you and I were talking about the astrology lately and how kind of crazy things feel. Like if you're just in general feeling like, wah, like maybe this is your starting place, or maybe you go underneath the table or the chair right now if you're just wanting to hide from the world. Whatever it is that you're feeling, give yourself permission to just embody that now. And I'm gonna play this song and really just allow yourself to, you can close your eyes, you can really connect inward, and maybe finding some movement within this starting place. Sometimes we have a tendency to want to like move out of it right away, but what is it like to really be in it, to really feel this place? And as the music picks up, maybe you start to awaken a little more, awaken different parts of you. There's a stripping off, literally rushing your body, releasing anything that you don't need. The outer Buddha layer, cracking open. And just finding a place to bask in the feeling of where you are now, just in this short, maybe not even 2 minutes. I feel better, and I didn't even leave my chair.
Oh, Jess, that felt so, it's so simple. It feels so good just to move in your body.
Thank you. Oh, it's so simple. Yeah.
What I really appreciate about the way you started us is by being aware of where you are and accepting where you are without trying to change it. And I think that, I mean, those are the first two steps in Awaken: awareness and acceptance. And I think it is the medicine that is so important for change, right? Being like, here's where I'm starting today, and I don't have to pretend I'm anywhere else. I can just accept it and meet it and not rush out of it too soon, and just be in it. So thank you for that permission at the beginning of just meeting the self where we are.
You're welcome. Thank you. And is there anything else that I feel like, I mean, there's so many things I feel like different directions we could go in, but if there were to be someone who's watching who does feel like they're in a place of maybe depression or stuckness or on that hamster wheel of achievement, and really disconnected to themselves, to that inner place, anything you would want them to, aside from reading your book, which I highly recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I think first, one of the things that I think is so important as women, and Jess, I know you live by this too, is we have to be honest with ourselves and with each other, because we still, for the most part, live in a pretty conditioned society that tells us it's not safe to feel what we feel, or it's not right to feel what we feel. It's a denial of our truth, right? And that looks different for different people, right? We stay in a job that is really out of alignment, or a relationship that we've outgrown, or in a city, or in patterns. You know, there's a list of things that we may be settling for. Mm-hmm. And what happens when we settle is we deny our truth. Mm-hmm. And most people are scared to admit, like, whoa, this relationship is off, or this job is sucking my soul, or fill in the blank other thing, right? Most women come to me because it's like career and purpose and relationships, but it can be anything, right? My relationship with my family, or my children, or my home, or my community, or my friendships. And what often happens is that we're so afraid that we're going to have to make big changes if we admit to ourselves what's not working, that we deny it. And then we end up living in that kind of closed place, that box, which leads to depression and anxiety and sadness and fear. And then we turn to drinking and eating and social media and all the things to like help us feel better in the short term, because we're denying what we know to be true. But what I know in my own experience is and I've worked with countless women who have gone through this Awaken process, is that you don't actually have to change up your whole life to awaken to who you are. And oftentimes the thing you think is the problem isn't always the problem. I have women who come to me and are like, if I could just quit my job, then I would be happy. And by the end of going through this journey, it's like, oh, actually, it wasn't about quitting my job or leaving the relationship. It was that I was denying who I was in those situations. And I just had to learn how to be myself at the job, in the relationship. I had to set the boundaries. I had to ask for what I needed. I had to give myself permission to remember who I was and be who I was. And so oftentimes that first step, that crack, you know, the Buddha falling, cracking open, that awareness of like, this is working, this is not working. And it's a messy process, because it means, you know, you have to pull everything out of the closet and you have to look at it and you have to be honest. And most of us are scared to do that because we're afraid we're going to have to do something about it. And I just want to give you, everyone who's watching, permission. Like, you don't have to do anything about it. We don't get into action until the very fifth sacred step. There's a reason it's at the end, right? The beginning is just gathering information, learning about yourself, making these internal shifts. And sometimes, yeah, you choose to quit the job or leave the relationship. But I have found that 9 out of 10 times, you don't actually need to do the thing you think is the problem. You know, that's actually not the thing, right? Awakening doesn't mean like changing everything up. It just means peeling back the layers so that the fog clears, and then you just take the next step.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. Yeah, because that change can become another external thing that we have to do, which then, like you said, I mean, nobody wants to just like, okay, I'm gonna like do this thing and like change my whole life right now. Like, how do we do that? Like, is that even possible? But I love what you're saying, and that it resonates so deeply with me. Like, that's how I relate to the creative process as well. I think a lot of people are like, I want to create a dance piece, or I want to be an artist, or whatever it is. And it's also that like this giant thing of like, how do I become Beyonce in a week versus actually what's inside of you, like, you know, collecting what's inspiring you, who you are, like starting from that inner process. And then the art just emerges. It's like, you allow it to come by not trying to force it. And to me, that's such a feminine principle too. And I feel like you were like the emblem of like the divine feminine in so many ways, just that ability to be like, let's just allow, let's not force, let's not push, you know, like really just that awakening from the inside out.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. So I shared the first two steps are awareness and acceptance. And then the third step is acknowledgement, which is all about fear. Because this is what we have to look at, like the fear. And there's two types of people that I talk about in the book, fixers and avoiders. And usually we're a combination of both of them. We typically we realize something's not working in our life or something's out of alignment or uncomfortable and we want to fix it immediately, which is what you were talking about. Like, I'm going to quit my job and be Beyonce in a week, right? And I was a fixer, right? I mean, like, that's the truth. And I was also an avoider, right? Avoiders are like, I don't even want to look at this. I'm just going to binge watch TV for 5 hours or drink half a bottle of wine or eat ice cream at night, like whatever it is. Yeah. And so we have to learn to sit in the discomfort without doing anything about it, right? Like that process you're talking about of like letting it unfold within you, and it's birth in some ways, and it's uncomfortable sometimes. And then we eventually get into action, and there's an appreciation step. And then the fifth step's action. And we talk all about the difference, and this is what you're talking about, like the difference between inspired action and forced action, right? And inspired action is the way of the feminine, of like, what am I compelled to do? What pulls me forward? Not what I'm running away from, right? Because that's usually action done in the name of fear, but like what just like propels me forward. And you see that just in every single one of your dances. It's like you are being moved by something, right? It's like the inner work is like what we witness on the outside is because of the result of what is happening on the inside. And that is like the sustainable way to create, because it's what nourishes us. If we're doing it for an outcome, right, or an out there, then there's never going to be enough that makes us feel good, right? But if it's like, I'm just doing this because, I mean, like writing this book, like this has been like one of the most life-changing journeys for me. And the night before the book came out, I like hugged my little stuffed animal and like cried for half an hour. And I was like, oh, I wrote this book for me. I wrote this, like it changed me, right? And if people like benefit from it, beautiful. But like, I didn't write this book for other people, right? It's like, I am changed because of the process. So anyways, that just, yes to what you're saying about the feminine and the inspired action and the birthing of creation from within. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It resonates personally too, because I have a book in me that's actually mostly written, but I have been stalling for like years on the next action. But I also think that part of it is it hasn't been the right time yet for whatever reason, but it's getting closer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and Jess, what I'll say about that is like, I started this book 1.5 years ago. My plan was to have it done within like 6 months, which is an insane plan anyways. Yeah. And then I didn't touch it. You know, I mean, you know about this just from having read the book of like all the stuff that happened in between of like, it was just not time. It's like all creation, in my opinion, and I would imagine you probably feel the same way too with like your dance and your creativity. It has a life of its own and a timeline of its own. And we can't force it. We have to trust that even when we're not doing stuff, things are happening, right?
Yeah.
It's stillness.
Exactly. The version of the book that I would have published a few years ago is so different than the one that it's becoming now. And I'm like, oh, thank God I didn't do that one. Like, this is so much more true.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can't rush the process. You can't rush the truth. Like it's gotta emerge.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
I could just keep talking to you.
I feel like we should wrap it up, but like I totally could just keep talking to you all day.
Same.
so much. I'm going to share the book link and ways that people can get in touch with you below the video. So if you're watching this, make sure you do that. And thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jess, for all of your expression for this month of May that you give to the world, for your brightness and your joy and your truth and your awakened expression. I'm just so grateful to be your friend, and thank you for inviting me to share this with your beautiful community.
Of course, my pleasure.
Mm.
Bye.